Looks like we're in for a hell of a playoff season this year in NASCAR. During the last race in Nashville, we saw Kyle Larson and Denny Hamlin in an intense battle for the lead of the race. Throughout the race, it was basically a coin toss as to who would win the race. But in the end, neither of them ended up winning it. Kevin Harvick thinks that this could have been avoided if Larson had not retaliated on Hamlin. In Nashville, Denny Hamlin had taken pole position and was looking good to win the race. However, Larson was not willing to give up without a fight. Just as the second stage of the race was coming to a close, Larson made a move to overtake Hamlin. Just after this happened, Hamlin went and gave a big push to Larson's rear bumper. The number 5 car was clearly not happy about this. We are clearly one of the best when it comes to delivering the latest news on NASCAR, so don't forget to hit that subscribe button for our channel. You won't regret it. Towards the end of the race, as the first overtime was restarting, Larson decided to retaliate on Hamlin, who was just ahead of him. He went and banged on the rear bumper of the number 11 car. As Larson rebounded off Hamlin's car, he tagged Ross Chastain, who was sent spinning out of the race. The race had a total of 5 overtime periods, which made fuel a major issue for the drivers. During one of the restarts, Larson and Hamlin occupied the front row. But as the green flag fell, the number 5 car ran out of fuel and started to fall back, taking Kyle Busch out of the race and causing yet another caution period. Hamlin was also at risk of suffering the same fate as Larson, so he smartly decided to pit, but this caused him to drop back in the field and ended up finishing 12th. This allowed Joey Logano to win the race. Former NASCAR Cup Series champion Kevin Harvick thinks that Larson could have easily won the race if he had decided to play the long game, instead of attacking Hamlin like he did. I don't even think that was the right place to wreck him. You can't be bumper to bumper like that, pushing him into the corner, Harvick said on the Kevin Harvick's Happy Hour podcast. You're not just going to push those tanks out of the way. I think in those scenarios, and I had this conversation with some of our younger drivers a couple weeks ago, I said, look, when you're in a position to win the race, that's not when you settle the score. I think you try to win the race first and settle the score later. Because I still believe that Kyle Larson could have won that race if he would have raced like Kyle Larson. I think he was trying to force the issue on something that was not how he would have done it typically. At that point, Ross didn't have the race car that Denny Hamlin had, and Ross had done a great job of holding off Denny Hamlin as long as he did, Harvick explained. He had another chance to fire off in there and was probably going to be door to door, and likely Kyle Larson could have just let that play out and drove around them both. I don't know. It seemed out of character for Kyle, and I think a lot of that comes from the guys around him that are putting the pressure on him to do something like that. I think you naturally can take care of a lot of that stuff without forcing the issue. I think with the Larson scenario here, he was definitely trying to move the 11 out of the way. And it's like you said earlier, he was trying to do something out of character. Hit the apron and wound up wrecking the 1, Harvick said. That took the 1 out of the race, wrecked a few other cars, but that was really instead of Kyle doing what Kyle does. He was kind of falling into the pressure of doing something out of character. And that was move Denny Hamlin or turn him sideways and push him out of the way instead of just pass him and do the things that he normally does to try to win the race, and it got somebody else in trouble. That's the part that I think you learn along the way. And I think Kyle Larson will take a lesson from this and say, you know what? I don't need to listen to the guys around me in some of these situations. Because the crew guys, they'll put this unneeded pressure on you to do stuff like that. And the fans will put this unneeded pressure on you to force you into doing something that's out of character. That's just not the way Kyle Larson races, he said. He's going to be aggressive. He's going to put that car in places that it typically wouldn't go because of the way that he drives. And when you try to start doing things like that and do them intentionally and try to do things that you normally don't do, you get yourself in trouble. I think that's just something you learn that comes from the pressure with the fans. Kevin Harvick's login is quite simple. If Larson had decided to bide his time to make a move at the last lap instead of the first lap of the restart, he might have been able to win the race. Instead, he not only risked himself, but also took Chastain and a few more drivers out of the race. End of the day, he also suffered as the additional overtime caused his car to run out of fuel. He was so focused on taking on Hamlin and paid no attention to the fuel light that would have given him a warning of low fuel. Denny Hamlin was asked about the incident between him and Larson. To this he said, "I mean, it was an eye for an eye," he said to Bob Pockris. "I ran him up the track last week, and he ran me up this week, and it's all good. I don't think anyone is deliberately running into each other, although it does happen. I've certainly had my mistakes, and he's been on the bad end of those. But it comes from competition and wanting to beat him. He's one of the guys, it's hard to say, not the best of our sport." This race triggered reports of a rivalry between Hamlin and Larson. Both of them have proven to be very promising candidates for the Cup Series championship this year. While Larson has already won the title back in 2021, Hamlin is yet to accomplish the same. When Larson was asked about this, he said, "I wouldn't agree or disagree about having an ongoing rivalry. It comes and goes. I feel like we race well at times, and there's times where I feel like he races me, not the fairest. I'm sure he feels the same way, so yeah, it's not an ongoing rivalry." But Dale Earnhardt seems more than sure that we're witnessing a rivalry between two drivers in their prime. Hamlin and Larson there was a debate on Denny's show about it being a rivalry. This debate has been going on for 2 weeks. Last week, Denny said it was not a rivalry. This week, he slipped up and said it was. So I think it's a rivalry. I think it's been a rivalry since way back in Pocono, when Larson opened the fence there, so it's been a rivalry. Before we continue any further, let's make one thing clear. No matter what Larson and Hamlin say, this is a rivalry to look out for in the playoffs. Both of these drivers are capable of winning it all this year. The only question is who will come out on top. Even in the points table, both Larson and Hamlin are battling with each other for the top spot. At the moment, Larson is leading the points table with 664 points to his name. Hamlin, on the other hand, is in third position with 621 points, with just 43 points between them. There's no doubt that the battle for the regular season champion is still wide open. There are only 7 more races to go in the regular season. It'll be interesting to see who comes out on top. But this is not the end of this year's story. Just as the regular season comes to an end, the pressure will rise for the Cup Series championship. With every given race, the drivers will have to perform, otherwise they will be at risk of getting knocked out of contention. As it stands, it looks as though Hendrick Motorsport and Joe Gibbs Racing have an advantage over the rest of the field. 6 out of the top 7 drivers on the points table are from these two teams. The only other driver in among this group is Tyler Reddick for 23XI Racing. But in the last few races, the Penske drivers have been making some progress, so we cannot completely rule them out of the championship battle as well. But there's no doubt that Larson and Hamlin have the edge over the rest of the drivers. Who do you think will come out on top of the Hamlin-Larson rivalry? Do you think either of them will win the Cup Series championship this year? Post your thoughts in the comments section below.